Until 1955, when a dike was completed along the banks of the Cass River, spring flooding of the downtown area of Frankenmuth was a yearly event. These photographs from 1904 on record the extent of the damage. And the floods were often taken as an excuse for a party by some residents. Although the problem had been discussed each spring, interest receded as the floodwaters receded. It was in 1947 that William Zender Sr. presented the matter for consideration at the annual town meeting. There was a unanimous vote to share the $25,205 cost with the village and Zenders Incorporated. In 1952, Frankenmuth began construction of its dike, according to Army Corps of Engineers specifications. The last flood to cover Main Street was reported in the Frankenmuth News in 1955. In September of 1986, the rains came again. Day after day, the water level of the river rose. For the first time in 31 years, disaster was only a few inches away. In 2 days, 28 inches of rain had fallen. The earth was saturated, and the rivers in Michigan's Saginaw Valley were rising at an alarming rate. Frankenmuth, generally a tranquil little German tourist community, was suddenly thrust into a fight for its economic life. Thursday, September 11th. Department of Public Works Superintendent Jack Schluckbier.
On Thursday afternoon, we noticed the water being high enough that we were concerned about the Hubinger-Nicholas Mill area, which is a low area in the dike. When the mill was built, they had to kind of reshape the dike a little bit to fit that, and we needed to sandbag that area. You could see it was coming up and over that. So we got some sandbags and started filling that.
Jack Schluckbier relates the events of the evening before that were the start of the crisis.
September 10th, we had a serious rainfall that night. I was at a meeting at the Conservation Club, came home, and about the time I got home, around 10 or so, I got a call for a high water alarm at the pump station at the river here. I went down there, and the pump, in fact, did not kick in. We had to get the generator. City has a high 85 kW generator that we hooked up. We had a power outage, matter of fact, to the pole. Dan Geyer was there, and Lyle was called in. We put the generator online, and Ed Helm was there to help us hook this up. It's a quick, easy hookup, and it had just been put in about a half a year before. Luckily it was. It was kind of makeshift wiring before that, but it is completely reworked.
We will be referring frequently to the electric meter and later a yardstick as a quick visual reference of the water's progress. Fire Chief George Reinert.
About 4:30 on Thursday afternoon. At that time, Fireman Gene Ridmiller called me and said they're going to need some help. The water is rising fast by the mill. They were concerned about the electric meter. The electric meter was going to be underwater within maybe an hour or so. So we call consumers.
George Reinert.
It takes a lot of volunteers, and in a deal like this, we had a lot of people, golfers, volunteers, whatever you may call them. They all worked. Nobody ever said, I'm not going to get my hands dirty. They all pitched in, and that's the only thing that saves the downtown area.
Hundreds of volunteers sandbagged, not finishing until after midnight. The sandbag dike went along Mill Street to Edgewater Street, which was so named because that was the water's edge in the old flood days. 550 yards of sand and clay were used. The city received about 7,000 bags from the Star of the West Mill and the county.
How far above the ground? A foot.
See, we nailed that up. It was above the water.
Oh, it was? Well, that's bad news. He's getting all the thing we're saying.
Well,
I said,
the yardstick
what
is
I said.
a foot above the ground.
Water in the river was rising at approximately 4 inches per hour at this point. During the flood, food for the volunteers was supplied by McDonald's, Kern Sausage, Zender's, Bavarian Inn, the Village Store, and the Bavarian Bowl. Throughout the ordeal, with only a few exceptions, even businesses not directly affected by the outcome pitched in and helped in some way without being asked.
We tried to keep the basement clear of water, and we pumped with number 2 pumper first, and then we had auxiliary pumps. And it finally got to the point where the sand was coming in too fast, that one of our pumps filled up with sand, and we busted the rotor in it. So we decided we're just going to let it fill up because we couldn't handle it at that point anymore. So the walls wouldn't cave in the basement. We took the windows out of the basement to release the pressure. So the water came in on one side and ran out on Main Street down the sewer again.
Water seeping through on the east side of the mill is a sign of more trouble to come tomorrow.
About midnight, when most people went home, it had to be about the loneliest place in town. And usually about 6 or 8 of us stayed all night and watched that everything worked. One of them broke down, we fixed it again and got it back back on its track again.
The mill is the lowest part of the dike system. It's the weak link.
With that reminder from Carl Hansen, we start off Friday, day 2, a deceptively tranquil-looking day. The rain had stopped, but the wind and river are still moving along.
This is actually going to be a new tourist attraction here. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Where the hell was
Friday afternoon, the city asked the businesses in the floodplain to close as a safety precaution. All complied but one.
No more sleeping all night when we got something like this. Hold up. Got a lady with a baby.
Friday afternoon, the city asked the businesses in the floodplain to close as a safety precaution. All complied but one.
Hey, Jack, you need more?
I'm just trying to see what you got here.
I think you need more. Step out, Jack. Look at this.
Another load won't hurt.
Why don't you get these, pal? Doesn't matter.
Like it. Don't wear out the same movie, okay?
There we go. Oh, that is...
I'd like to get this water.
Yeah,
Like somebody to broom.
that big room right by the back window there. There's a lot to say.
Down basement, out the window.
There goes the fish.
Beer night! You lost a few sandbags. Beer needs some up there, doesn't he? Yep. Needs some more on top. We don't need these here. As long as you keep the star side up. Yeah.
I told my wife, I said,
We got tired of going.
coming back, I'm saying, I can tell it, I've got a steel hit. And I ain't carrying.
Do you need some more packs? Yeah. Okay.
Beer lane reinforced the studs and the sidewalls so the walls wouldn't cave in. That's the only thing that held water between the mill and the restaurant. That's the only point that held it. That 3/4 inch plywood and 2x4 studs. That's what we were concerned about, that it would collapse and then the water would run right out to the mill downtown. We had another problem at the Heidelman Brewery. They were taking on water in their basement faster than they could pump it out too. So we sent one pumper over there and a portable pump with their 3 other pumps that they had there, and we pumped there continuously. A lot of people thought there was going to be a lot of people drowning downtown, and which could have happened, but it would have happened real fast. The dike, we knew, wasn't going to hold. There was no doubt in their mind that the dike wouldn't hold. It's just the wood, flour mill that was our concern, because that was the lowest spot.
Throughout the crisis, the news media were in evidence.
What's it like inside your mill today?
Oh, it's not too bad except the basement.
Little spongy.
The seepage east of the mill continues. John Frank of Zeilinger Trucking has the honor of moving over 400 yards of clay into the area. City Manager Charlie Graham.
It was scary. I can remember thinking about seeing the water at a certain level and thinking that's got to be as high as it's going to go, because it's already a lot higher than anybody ever envisioned that it would ever get to. And then it would still go up some more. And then when it went up some more, then you'd look at it and say, well, it's got to be the end of it. And then it would still go up some more beyond that. And it seemed like it just kept doing that. That's, and of course, the higher it got, the scarier it got.
Meanwhile, the water that was going to be causing Frankenmuth trouble was already devastating the city of Vassar, 9 miles upstream.
Yeah, this is the worst we ever had it.
Never seen it this bad before, huh?
Not in the fall. I've been here 30 years, and this is the worst we ever been. We've had it in September.
After the mill, the next lowest spot along the dike is the Main Street Bridge. With the water nearing the road, sandbags were at ready. Police Chief Jim Pettis.
But we were getting concerned at that point that the water was going to come over the bridge on Main Street. Contact was made with the State Highway Department, and we, at that point, the decision was made to close Main Street off. The State Highway Department sent out barricades and a crew, and we made a detour around. The members of the Frankenmuth Mounted Police who were available, and there were a couple, 3 of them, were called in to direct traffic.
Sure got a stream going on.
I remember the Frankenmuth High School football team came down and assisted in getting all the sandbags in place in case we were to need them. And we virtually shut down Main Street from about noon on Friday until midnight Friday night, about a 12-hour period there that it was shut down. Water never did come over the bridge. The water kept coming up and coming up. I mean, it kept raining, but it's rained before. And the water kept coming up and coming up. And there was never that focus on what was a real disaster happening. I never, like say, if you see a tornado or a fire or something that's physically just devastated, you know what I mean, right away, hey, this is a disaster. But that rising water was just sort of a slow, meticulous procedure that I don't know if it ever dawned on us how, really critical it may have been at times.
Meanwhile, worse troubles were developing at the city's flood pumps. After several days of continuous use and overloading, the wires burnt off between the transformer and the control panel. All hell broke loose in a preview of the worst possible case scenario. Jack Schluckbeer.
About 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, we again burnt the wires off going to the transformer. Now we've got a hole in the dike 20 inches wide open. Our generator was back up at the Public Works garage, so Randy and I very quickly tried to get this generator, and luckily Zender's was closed that day. And I say luckily because we had very little time and we didn't need to hassle any traffic or cars in the parking lot. We got the generator hooked up to this 20-inch pump and once again got started pumping. Because the cars were not there, and I cannot overemphasize that enough. We were lucky the cars were not in there that day. We got to hook it up quickly, and then at that time, we also called the fire department for standby because we knew our one pump had a bad set of overloaded bearings. The other pump was vulnerable only to this generator until consumers could get out here and rewire. And all this we had no time to do this. Time was very important. The pump is running on generator power. The fire department has 3 trucks pumping, and we are making some progress on the flooded parking lot.
WJRT-TV interviewed Mayor Ruprecht, who voiced the town's worst fears.
Both pumps went out, the entire downtown would flood. The same as if the river spilled over the retaining walls on the dike, it would create the same effect.
The river crested before midnight at 13.5 feet over flood stage, 7 foot more than any recorded flood in the city's history. The Army Corps of Engineers had designed the dike for the so-called 100-year flood. The flood of '86 went 11 inches above that. Saturday, day 3.
8 o'clock or so, people started coming out, and in fact, the sun was shining. Everybody felt much, much better, but I had the feeling that not everything was over with yet. It simply wasn't. That the river was still there. The dike had been subjected to 4 days of wet, but the sun was shining. Everybody felt better. Things were going good. We had plenty of room to operate, and I just assumed, and I guess I shouldn't have, that downtown, at least the restaurants, or perhaps most of downtown, would have been closed to leave us room to work. I looked up around 10 or 11, and the parking lot started filling up. I tried to plead with Zenders, not Zenders. Zenders were closed on Friday. I assumed naturally they would be closed on Saturday. I think it was Bavarian Inn. You can't be open today. There isn't room for people down here. They said, this is going to be a busy day. Everybody comes to look at the flood. To my surprise, Zender's parking lot started filling up also, right around the fire trucks, right around where we had to work.
Jack Schluckbeer has more immediate troubles thrust at his crew when the city's 60-horsepower tractor cannot continue to take the strain of pumping against the river.
Weiss Farm Equipment brought another tractor down of 115 horsepower. Now, this 16-inch pump was never designed to hook a 115 horsepower tractor to it. It's too many horses. The pump wasn't built for it. But our tractor wouldn't turn it. We had no choice but to try it because it was either going to turn or break one way or the other, so we tried it, put it on, and in fact, we turned that with some bad or overloaded bearings, and this pump did hold up for the duration.
The pump problem is surmounted, but the danger and the crowding is still there.
I tried to call Charlie Graham, and he in turn called the mayor, and they were going to have an emergency meeting at 1 o'clock. Well, at 1 o'clock on Saturday, just about everything went backwards.
Just pulsating, yeah, it's going down. No, it's coming up. But when it does that, it comes up to the basement right away, huh? Ooh, Jesus.
They better get that car out of here. They better get that car out of here.
The city crew, I know they had their work cut out with their pump. They had problems from the time the flood started by the time it ended just about. And that was our problem. If their pumps would have worked, we wouldn't have had any water problems at all downtown. Because we never got flooded downtown. It was just that intake that caused that problem. There's a 20-inch intake in there and a 12-inch intake. And as soon as we shut the pumps down, the water gushed into those 32 inches of water. And then we had to pump again to get it back out.
Dan Geyer from the water treatment plant has been attempting to place a steel plate over the pump's outlet to stop the backflow into the city, to no avail.
But there was a lot of things learned from the flood. Because when you have people coming in, tourists coming in, especially when you advertise the flood on the television and radio, if they weren't in Frankenmuth, they did come to see what was going on in Frankenmuth. And they couldn't care less if the water would have seeped in or not. They just wanted to go and see what was going on and eat their chicken dinners. So this was another problem for us and the police because there were so many cars we couldn't hardly turn around. When you see a foot of water in the Zender's parking lot on the level, it kind of changes your mind. You wonder if you can pump it all or not.
The combined pumping power of all the fire engines and miscellaneous pumps in use was 4,600 gallons per minute. If either of the city's pumps would have permanently failed, there would have been no way to keep the water out, as those two flood pumps moved 20,000 gallons per minute. anyone that could possibly help with the ailing pump was welcomed. Remember the warning the mayor gave yesterday?
Both pumps went out, the entire downtown would flood. The same as if the river spilled over the retaining walls on the dike, it would create the same effect.
Fuel was brought in by Schluckbeer Oil. They brought the truck in, and then we filled a 55-gallon drum and put it on a cart and just went from one truck to another in the water.
Meanwhile, down the street, the annual Folklife event was in progress. And it was business as usual throughout the town. Most people didn't realize how imperiled the downtown area really was.
And when they finally came to tell us that the water was going down, everybody had a big smile on their face, and we were happy. Because there was not much room anymore for it to go up. The business people downtown, I don't think really realized what could have happened.
Probably can't see it. You got to get up on here. Okay, this is the high water mark right there. And we're down right now. We were down, say, about, what, 11 inches about? 11 and a half, maybe? About 11 and a half inches down. So, looking good now.
Jerry Braun, proprietor of the mill, gives us a view of the situation as things start a slow return to normal.
The biggest problem with the whole flood was you couldn't go to any older people that had experience that were here in Frankenmuth all their life because they never seen anything like it either. So we hope that it won't happen for another 100 years.
Sunday, day 4, the day after. Things are looking rosy for Frankenmuth, with a significant drop in water level. The end was in sight. In Vassar, upstream, the water was also gone. In its place, they had a curfew, the National Guard patrolling its streets, and its business district, as well as many homes, in ruin. Downriver, Bridgeport, and Saginaw were bracing for the worst which was yet to come for them. Mayor Gary Ruprecht.
Dear friends, we can, as the Reverend Paul Shoemaker said, thank the Lord that we have been blessed by our community being spared from the raging waters of the Cass River. I must agree that it was more than luck that enabled the water to crest inches below the point of spilling over our retaining walls and thus avoiding the flooding of the entire downtown area. We experienced some damage in our parks, but minimal compared to the damage in other communities. A big thank you, of course, must go out to all that helped reinforce our entire flood control system. Frankenmuth has long been known for its volunteerism and working together, but it was never more evident than this past week. I can't describe the feeling of pride that swelled up inside of me when I saw literally hundreds of volunteers bagging sand and bringing in equipment. Many others asked, what can I do? I want to help. As we have said so many times before, it's the people of Frankenmuth that makes it so special, and that fact was proven again without a doubt. A special thank you, of course, must go to the fire department, ambulance, police, the city crews, and all the contractors who brought in materials and equipment around the clock. Special thanks also go to the neighboring communities of Birch Run, Bridgeport Township, and Buena Vista Township, the City of Flint, the National Guard, Saginaw County, the State Highway Department, Michigan State Police, the Governor's Office, and Saginaw Division of General Motors Corporation. Finally, Frankenmuth is also known for its spirit of generosity in helping those in need. We now have a great opportunity to help our neighboring community of Vassar, who has lost so much. To enable you to provide much-needed financial assistance, the City of Frankenmuth has established a City of Frankenmuth Vassar Flood Relief Fund. Stories will be told and retold about the great flood of 1986, and you will hear the names of many who helped out in big ways and small ways. When you see those people you heard about, why not say thanks to all of them? They deserve it.
The whole thing was, you know, it's like kind of like a bad dream. I think the human mind tends to blank out bad things that happen, and so you sort of relive it when you watch the video again, and it brings some of that bad feeling back. So it was a very, very unusual event. Obviously, I don't expect any of us will ever see anything like that again because it was so unusual. There's never been in recorded history any water anywhere near that level. It was 7 feet higher than the previous recorded high in the Cass River, going back to probably 1900 when they first started keeping records. So chances are none of us will ever see it again, and so it was a very, very unusual event. The dike saved the downtown area from just horrible damage. You know, when you think about the way we came out of it compared to other communities, we're very fortunate. As you watch the film, you see the faces of a lot of people that you know and that are from this area, and they had no responsibility whatsoever. They're citizens who live here, and yet they were willing to come down there and fill sandbags and do this and do that in any kind of a way that they could to assist so that we could, as a community, fight against this thing altogether. Of course, later we had the party, the Flood Fest party at Bavarian Inn, and all of those folks were invited to participate in an effort to try to show an expression of gratitude.
Thing that is just, you know, when you got a impeller on a pump spinning backwards, and you try and start it to go the other way. It's just, instead of pulling 60 amps, it pulls 180 amps, you know. It's just, and the wiring isn't sized for that. It's just, because something's got to give.
And it also had all the water.
Yeah, and pushing against the head and everything.
I'm sure we'll buy a new check valve. Or get a check valve.
Yeah. I think there's a few lessons to be learned in this thing, and develop a whole manual of procedures, what goes first and so on, in case it ever happens again. This may be a 100-year flood, but it can happen within 5 years or 10 years, you know. It's just,